She had never lost. 52 fights, 52 wins, 48 of them by knockout. 34 of those knockouts came in the first round. Her name was Molly. In Thai, the word means jasmine. Before every fight, she pressed a single white flower into her hair. By the end of the night, the flower was usually still there. Her opponents were not. The Bangkok press called her the Princess. She had earned the name 2 years earlier. A former champion named Pim Chai Sai had stepped in against her at Lumpinee. Chai Sai had 37 fights of his own. He was supposed to test her. The bell rang at 9:14 in the evening. 9 seconds later, Molly walked back to her corner. A sports writer at ringside wrote the next morning that she had ended him like a princess accepting tribute. The name stuck. 3 years passed. Nobody got it off her. By September of 1971, the Princess of Lumpinee had a reputation that ran beyond Bangkok. 3 of her former opponents had been carried out of Lumpinee on stretchers. One had stopped seeing properly out of his right eye. Another woke up in a clinic bed with no memory of the afternoon and never fought again. No one who lost to her ever asked for a rematch, not one. Lumpinee promoters had begun paying double the usual purse to find anyone willing to step into the ring with her. The good fighters had stopped accepting. This is the story of the night a stranger walked into Lumpinee Stadium, sat in the 3rd row, and changed everything Molly thought she knew about her own gift. It is the story of how the princess, for the first time in her life, bowed. She had no idea who he was. His name was Bruce Lee.
I knew her mother, strict woman. Molly got those eyes from her. We called her the princess, not because she was soft, because she ended you like it was already decided before you walked in.
Lumpinee Stadium opened in 1956 in the middle of Bangkok, 3 streets from the park that gave it its name. The roof was tin. The seats were wooden benches that smelled of sweat and cigarette smoke and the cooking oil from the noodle stalls outside. On big nights, 3,000 people packed inside, and the air went so thick you could feel it in your throat before the first bell. This was where careers were made in Thai boxing. This was also where they ended. Molly had grown up walking past the gates. Her family lived close enough that she could hear the crowd noise on Saturday nights through her bedroom window. She started training at 9. Her first amateur fight was at 12. Her first professional fight was at 17. By 20, she had 16 wins, 15 of them by knockout. She was natural. By 23, she was the most dangerous human being in the building. Most fighters earn nicknames from the way they fight. Molly earned hers from the way she walked to the ring. She did not stomp. She did not shout. She walked in a soft, straight line, eyes ahead, breathing slow. She never looked at the crowd. She never looked at her opponent. She climbed the steps, ducked through the ropes, and waited at her corner like a woman about to attend a piano recital. Then the bell would ring. Her signature was a 3-step combination she had drilled with her trainer for nearly a decade. A short left jab to bring her opponent's guard up. A teep, the Muay Thai push kick, to break their rhythm. And then, while her opponent was still recovering from the kick, a right elbow that came in low and from the side, hidden by her own forearm until the last quarter second.
I have seen 4 men leave Lumpinee on stretchers because of that elbow. They called it the thorn. I called it the kitchen knife because she used it the way I cut chicken, clean and fast.
Of her 48 knockouts, 31 came from that combination. Her trainers had a name for it. They called it the Molly, the flower with a thorn behind it. The thorn was the elbow. She had broken 7 ribs in opponents over her career. She had broken 4 jaws, 2 eye sockets. The damage she did was not theatrical. It was clinical. She did not throw flurries. She did not aim for the face. She spotted the weak part like radar and then went straight for the kill. She stopped throwing as soon as the referee moved. In a sport built on flash and bravado, This is what scared people the most. Molly was not angry. She was hunting.
She did not enjoy it. That was the strangest part. No anger, no joy, like she was clipping a bird's wing. Her eyes did not change before the bell, during, after. The same eyes.
By the autumn of 1971, the Lumpinee promoters had stopped putting her in main events with title belts on the line. Not because she did not deserve them, because nobody wanted to be the second name on the poster. The Princess had become the show itself. On the night of the 24th of September, she had 3 fights scheduled. She would win all 3. But she had no idea about the 4th one, the one that would change how she fought for the rest of her career. 80 kilometers north of Bangkok, in a town called Pak Chong, an exhausted film crew was finishing their 10th straight week of shooting in a place that was not made for cinema. The film was The Big Boss. It had no studio backing in the Western sense. The director kept changing his mind. The producer ran out of money twice. The location was a half-finished ice factory that the crew used both as a set and as a place to sleep. The lead actor, a young man from Hong Kong who almost nobody outside Asia had heard of, was paid $7,500 for the entire production. His name was Bruce Lee. In late September of 1971, Bruce had been in Thailand for almost 3 months. He had cuts on his hands from prop glass that had been swapped for real glass in a fight scene. He had lost 12 pounds because the crew lived on rice and tinned fish. The director had punched a stuntman. Bruce was 20 days from the end of the shoot. He had not been to Bangkok in 2 months. He had also been writing letters to a Bangkok trainer named Krung. He wanted to know how Thai fighters generated power from the hip. He wanted to know how the clinch worked. He wanted to know about the elbow strike, which had no real equivalent in Wing Chun. Krung wrote back in patient, careful English. Then, in the second week of September, Krung wrote a letter that was different from the others. He wrote, "If you can find one weekend, come to Bangkok. There is a fighter at Lumpinee that you have to see with your own eyes. I cannot describe her. I can only tell you that you will not understand Muay Thai until you have seen this." He wrote, "Her name is Molly. They call her the Princess."
I have seen many fighters at Lumpinee. Champions, killers, men who broke other men for a living. None of them were like that small foreigner. 3,000 of us were in that stadium. He was alone. And somehow he was the only one who was not afraid.
Bruce got 2 days off at the end of the 3rd week of September. He took the bus to Bangkok. He arrived at Lumpinee at 6:30 in the evening on the 24th. He bought a regular price ticket. He sat in the 3rd row in the section closest to the ring on the eastern side, and he watched. He watched her win her first fight at 7:20 in the evening. He watched her win her second fight at 8:15. The 3rd fight was scheduled for 9:30. He did not know it yet, but he was 40 minutes from the moment that would push him out of his chair and into the ring. Molly's 3rd opponent that night was a 26-year-old journeyman named Vichai. 16 wins, 3 losses. His specialty was that he did not go down. In 19 previous fights, he had been knocked out exactly once. He was the kind of fighter promoters used to test rising stars. Molly broke him in less than 4 minutes. The fight started at 9:32. Vichai opened cautiously, circling, throwing low kicks that Molly absorbed without reacting. He was reading her, looking for the rhythm that would tell him when the elbow was coming. He spent the first round defensive. He spent the second round trying to drag her into the clinch where his weight advantage might mean something. It did not. She broke out of the clinch on the second attempt. She drove a knee into his ribs that lifted him off his back foot. And then, while the referee was still watching, she set up the combination. The jab to bring his guard up, the teep to break his stance, and the elbow. The elbow came at 9:35 and 41 seconds. It struck him on the right side of his jaw, just below the ear, where the bone is thinnest. Vichai went down sideways. He was not unconscious. His eyes were open, but his body had stopped responding to instructions. He lay on the canvas for almost 20 seconds before the medical staff reached him. By then, a thread of blood had begun to come out of his ear. There was no cheering. There was a long, low sound, almost a moan, made up of 3,000 people simultaneously realizing that the man on the ground might not be standing up tonight. Molly was already at her corner. Her trainer was wiping her face. She had not looked back at the body. In the third row, in the eastern section, Bruce Lee smiled. He did not smile because the violence had pleased him. He smiled because something he had been trying to understand for 3 months had just turned its gears in front of him. He had read about the elbow. He had written to Krung about it. He had drawn the angle on paper. He had never seen it run until that night. The hip rotation, the shoulder dip, the way the trailing hand stayed up to disguise the strike until the last instant. It was a beautiful piece of work, the kind that has nothing to do with whether the consequences are pleasant. It was one artist watching another at work. He did not know that anyone was watching him.
3,000 pairs of eyes saw violence. One pair saw something else. There is a difference between watching a fight and watching a fighter. He was watching her just like an old chef watching a young one work the knife, without judgment.
Molly's corner cutman saw it first. He had been working corners in Bangkok since 1949. When the bell ended Molly's third fight, he looked up from Vichai's body and scanned the rows. He saw the small foreigner. He saw the smile. He leaned over the ropes and tapped Molly on the shoulder. He pointed. Molly turned. She was breathing through her nose. Her right hand wrap was loose. The jasmine flower was still in her hair, slightly tilted. She followed the cut man's finger to the third row and found the foreigner. Bruce was still smiling. He saw her looking and did not change his expression. He did not look away. He inclined his head very slightly, in what was either a polite acknowledgment or the smallest nod of respect. Either way, it was not the reaction of someone who had been caught. Molly's face did not change. She did not look angry. The princess did not get angry. What she did was much colder, and the cutman, who had known her since she was 12, recognized it instantly and felt his stomach drop. She walked to the center of the ring. The microphone was usually only handed to her after a fight, to thank the crowd. Tonight, she did not wait for it. She raised her right arm, pointed directly at the third row, and spoke in English clear enough for the people around Bruce to lean back. "You, in the dark shirt." The English was accented but clear. 2 of the foreign tourists in row 5 turned to look at Bruce. "You think it is funny?" The crowd did not know what was happening. Half of them did not understand the English. The other half had not seen the smile. There was a confused murmur. 3,000 people leaning forward at the same time. Bruce stood up. He spoke without raising his voice. The Lumpinee acoustics carried everything from the third row to the ring as long as you spoke clearly. "I was not laughing," he said. "I was admiring. It was the wrong answer. Not because it was untrue, because Molly did not believe him. She had spent her career being looked at by men who thought a small woman with a jasmine flower could not really be fighting. She knew what it looked like when a man laughed at her. She thought she had just seen it again. She lowered her arm. She walked to the ropes nearest him. She put both hands on the top rope and leaned forward. "Then come up here," she said. "Come up here and tell me again. I want to see if you can still smile when you're standing across from me." There was a sound that began in the back of the building and rolled forward like a wave. Surprise, excitement. They were wondering who the smiling stranger in the third row was. For 3 seconds, Bruce did not move. He had not come to Lumpinee to fight. He had come to learn, to observe, but the princess was waiting at the ropes, and Bruce Lee, in the autumn of 1971, was 30 years old, and he had just been called out by a 52-0 champion in front of 3,000 people. Something inside him, the part of him that had made him a martial artist in the first place, was already starting to move. He stepped out of his row and walked toward the ring.
I have seen fighters walk to the Lumpinee ring with shaking knees. I have seen them praying. This one, he walked like he was going to pick up groceries.
The aisle was narrow. People had to pull their feet back to let him pass. Bruce did not hurry. He did not slow down. He did not look at any of the faces watching him. He walked toward the ring the way a craftsman walks to his bench. He took off the dark shirt before he reached the steps. He folded it once, lengthwise, and placed it on the empty seat at the end of the front row. He climbed the 4 steps to the apron. He ducked under the top rope. He walked to the center of the ring and waited. The crowd had gone quiet. Molly had come to the center too. They stood at almost the same height. He was leaner than her by about 10 pounds. She was wearing the standard red Muay Thai shorts and the prosciutto armbands of her gym. Bruce was wearing dark trousers and nothing else. She looked at him with the cold, level eyes of a fighter who had broken 48 men before him. The shoulder development, the forearms, the way his weight was distributed on his feet. She had seen a lot of bodies in her career. This one was not like the others. She sensed it. The referee, a confused man in his 40s, came up to them and asked in Thai what was happening. Molly answered him in Thai, 2 short sentences. The referee looked at Bruce. He hesitated. Then he nodded slowly and stepped back. There would be no judges, no rounds, no rules beyond the basics. It was a demonstration. The kind of thing that occasionally happened at Lumpinee in the last hour of the night when a champion wanted to make a point. The cornermen on both sides understood. 2 minutes. Stop on knockout, stop on submission, stop when one of them wanted to stop. Molly looked at Bruce. "What is your name?" she said. He looked back at her. "I am a martial artist," he said. "That is all you need to know." She did not blink. "We'll see in a minute," she said. The bell rang. She came at him fast. The first thing Bruce learned in the first 3 seconds of the fight was that everything he had read about Muay Thai range was wrong, or more precisely, everything he had read had been theoretical, and now it was being delivered to him by a 52-0 champion at full speed. She did not throw a jab. She did not feel him out. She closed the distance with a short forward step and came up immediately into a teep that was not the same teep she had been using all night. The previous teeps had been measured. This one was thrown for power. The ball of her foot caught him in the lower stomach. He had not moved his elbow down in time. His abdominal muscles took most of the impact, but a small shock traveled up into his diaphragm. The breath went out of him for a half second. She was already on him. The second thing he learned was that the elbow did not come where the books said it came. The book said the elbow came after the teep in a clear 3-step combination. In real time, the elbow came almost simultaneously with the teep, while the opposite leg was still rotating. Molly's right elbow was already arcing through the air before her left foot had returned to the canvas. He turned his head 2 inches to the left. The elbow passed in front of his face. He felt the air move. He had not blocked it. The elbow could not be blocked at that speed. Anyone who tried would have broken his own arm. He had moved out of the way of it instead, by less than the width of his thumb. The reflex came from study. For 8 weeks he had been working out the angle of that exact elbow, in slow motion, in his sleep, on the bus from Pak Chong, in his hotel room the night before. He stepped back. He looked at her. In Molly's corner, the cutman leaned forward. He had recognized something. He could not yet say what. Molly did not give Bruce the chance to think. She came again, this time with a low kick that hit him on the outside of the thigh. Bruce did not check it. He let it land. The kick made a sound across the building like a leather strap on a wooden post. He felt the muscle there go tight. The leg would still work, but it would hurt for the next 48 hours. He let it land because he was watching. He was watching her shoulders. He was watching the way her hips loaded before each strike. He was watching the small tell, the quarter-second drop in her left shoulder that came before the elbow. By the time the second teep came, 10 seconds into the fight, he was no longer reading the books. He was reading her. The second teep he caught with his left hand and pushed sideways. She had never had a teep caught and redirected before. The motion took her balance from under her for a fraction of a second. She corrected by stepping wide with her right foot, but the wide step opened her hip line. He saw it. He did not strike. He could have. The opening was there for nearly half a second, which is an eternity in a fight. He could have driven a straight right hand directly into the side of her body and broken something. He chose not to. He stepped back again. The crowd, which had been waiting for the small foreigner to be flattened in 12 seconds, had begun to make a different kind of sound, not loud, confused. The sound of a building full of people simultaneously revising what they thought they were watching. In Molly's corner, the cut man said one word out loud to nobody in particular. He said, "Oh no."
For the first time, Molly was the one being read, not the reader. She was attacking. He was learning. Two different fights happening in the same ring. He moved like water, finding the shape around her. There, but never where she struck.
For the next 90 seconds, Bruce Lee did not throw a single hard strike. He moved. He let her come. She came with everything. She threw the combination that had earned her 31 knockouts. The jab, the teep, the elbow. He moved his head 4 inches, and the elbow passed his ear. She threw a left hook to the body. He turned his hip, and the hook landed on the bone of his pelvis instead of his ribs. She threw a knee in the clinch. He pivoted 90 degrees, and her knee found empty air. She did not understand what was happening. Nobody in the building did. She had thrown the jab. She had thrown the teep. She had thrown the elbow that had ended 52 careers. Not one of them had landed. He was not blocking. He was redirecting. The principle came from the Wing Chun he had grown up with and the new ideas he had been working on for the past 3 years. The ideas he had begun calling Jeet Kune Do. The principle was that a strike thrown with full commitment had a path in space, and the most efficient defense was not to stop the path, but to remove yourself from it by the smallest possible distance, in the smallest possible amount of time, with the smallest possible motion. A fighter who blocks a strike absorbs the energy of it. A fighter who slips a strike loses nothing. He was losing nothing. Molly, on the other side of it, was paying for every strike that did not land. Each missed elbow took a piece of her stamina. Each redirected knee took a piece of her balance. By the 90-second mark, her breathing had deepened and her shoulders had begun to drop. She knew this feeling. She had inflicted it on 48 people. She had never felt it on the other side of it. She stopped. She stood in the center of the ring and looked at him. He stood 3 feet away from her. He was not breathing hard. His face was calm. His hands were down at his sides. He had not yet thrown a strike. For a long moment, neither of them moved. She said, in English, one word, "Why?" He did not answer. He looked back at her with the same quiet expression he had worn for the past 90 seconds. The question hung in the air between them, unanswered. 3,000 people in the building had stopped making sound. She knew, looking at his face, that he was not going to speak. She had seen fear in men's eyes. She had seen surrender. She saw neither in his. He had been reading her the whole time, and he had not even begun to fight. For 14 years she had put that fear in men's eyes. Tonight she felt it in her own. This time she came with everything she had left. She had spent 14 years studying fighters. Tonight she was studying one she could not see. The strikes were still coming, but they were coming without the spaces between them now, without the patience that had ended 52 careers. What was left was 14 years of training released without thought. None of it landed clean. On the 12th strike, she stepped wide, and Bruce stepped inside. His right fist came to rest against her sternum. He did not pull back. There was no room. There was no need. The fist did not have to travel. The body would travel for it. The hip rotated 1/4 of an inch. The shoulder followed. Every joint in his frame fired in a sequence that had been refined for years in private rooms, and 140 pounds of trained mass converged on a single point of contact through the fist that had not moved. Molly came off her feet. The force took her 2 paces back across the canvas. She had not seen the punch begin. The shoulders had not loaded. The arm had not drawn back. The strike had come out of contact itself. There was no distance, and none was needed. The body had been the distance. She landed on her side. She had been hit harder than she had been hit in 52 professional fights, and the man who had hit her was not even breathing hard. Bruce stepped forward. His right leg lifted knee-high and began to come down, the descending heel strike that ends a fighter on the ground. The motion was already committed. The leg was already moving. 3 inches from her collarbone, he stopped. He held the leg there, suspended for a half second. The leg did not move. The body did not move. Then he set it down. The fight was over. Molly looked up at him from the canvas. She did not need anyone to explain what had just happened. She had been a fighter for 14 years. The strike she had not seen, the leg that had not finished, the half-second pause. She read all of it from the floor. She did not protest. She nodded once, slowly, from the canvas. Bruce stepped back.
I have seen 1,000 endings at Lumpinee. None like that one. It was the most gentle ending of a fight I have ever seen, and the most violent, both at the same time. If you put any other fighter on the planet in that ring with the princess, she finishes them. But he was not any other fighter.
There was no bell to end it. The referee did not step in. He did not need to. In a stadium that had not been quiet for hours, the only sound was Bruce's breathing. Molly did not move for several seconds. Then she got to her feet. She stood there for several seconds without moving. Her chest rose and fell. The jasmine flower had fallen from her hair sometime during the fight, and it was lying on the canvas between them. She did not see it. Her eyes were on the small foreigner in the dark trousers. She was still wondering how. Her technique had been almost flawless, and yet he had found the gap. She had been beaten. The strangeness of having been hit once and then spared was something Molly, at 23, did not yet have language for. The crowd was silent. 3,000 people in a building made of tin and wood and cigarette smoke, holding their breath. Bruce did not speak. He did not raise his arms. He did not look at the crowd. He looked only at her. Then his eyes moved to the canvas between them. He bent. He picked the jasmine flower off the floor. He straightened, took 2 steps toward her, and held the flower out on the flat of his palm. Molly looked at it. She took it from him without saying anything. She held it. Bruce gave the smallest nod. Molly looked at him a moment longer. Then she lowered her eyes. She put her hands together in front of her chest, fingers pointing up. She lowered her head. She bent forward at the waist slowly until her forehead was almost level with her knees. She held the bow for nearly 5 seconds. In Thai martial arts, this is the why. It is a gesture of respect that fighters give to teachers, to elders, to opponents who have shown them the edge of their own training. In 52 professional fights, the Princess of Lumpinee had never given a why to any opponent. Bruce returned the bow. He returned it the way a man returns a gift he was not expecting and did not feel he had earned. He pressed his palms together at his chest. He bent at the waist, he held it. When he straightened, he turned, walked to the ropes, ducked under them, picked his folded shirt off the front row seat, and walked toward the doors of Lumpinee Stadium. Molly called after him from the ring, "What is your name?" The doors were already swinging shut behind him. If he answered, the noise of the building swallowed it. He went out into the warm Bangkok night. He took the morning bus back to Pak Chong. He worked on the Big Boss set for the next 18 days. The film was released in October. It made him a star. By the spring of 1973, he was the most famous martial artist in the world. He never spoke publicly about the night at Lumpinee. He never had to. Molly kept fighting. She had 10 more professional fights after the night of the 24th of September. She won all 10, 3 by knockout, the other 7 by decision. The Bangkok press noticed, in the months after, that she had begun to pull her elbows, that she was choosing to box more and to break less. She still wore the jasmine flower. The signature combination still came out, but the thorn behind it had softened slightly, in a way that only the people who had watched her for years could see.
A fighter at the top of the mountain has only one thing left to learn, that there is no mountain. He brought her down so she could see further.
She retired from the ring in 1976 at 28 with a final record of 62-0. She told her students that the most dangerous opponent was the one they could not read. That was the case when she fought against Bruce Lee. She could not see the moves. He was like water, fluid, flowing. And in the end, water pierced the thorn. That is what she taught her students, being shapeless. In 1984, a Thai sports magazine ran an interview with her. The interviewer asked her if she had any regrets in her career. She said no. The interviewer asked her if there was any fight she remembered better than the others. She thought about it for a long time. She said, "There was a man who came to Lumpinee one night. He was a foreigner. I never knew his name. I saw him smile while I was working, and I thought he was laughing at me, and I called him into the ring. For a long time, my strikes found empty air. In 14 years, I had never met a body I could not touch. When the punch came, I did not see it. I felt my body lift, travel, and come down. I remember the smell of the canvas before the pain. He stood above me. I closed my eyes and waited. Then he stepped back. I understand it now, or some of it. Back then, I waited for him to finish me." The interviewer asked her what she had learned from that fight. She said, "I learned that I had been the Princess of Lumpinee, and there were kings in the world I had not yet met." The interviewer asked her if she had ever found out who the foreigner was. Molly shook her head. She said, "He told me he was a martial artist. That was what he wanted me to know, so that is what I know." The interview was published in October. By then, the Big Boss had been in Asian theaters for 13 years, and Bruce Lee had been dead for 11. There were posters of him on the walls of half the gyms in Bangkok. Bruce Lee taught the world many things. He taught the discipline of water. He taught the absence of form. The lesson he taught a champion in a ring at Lumpinee on the night of the 24th of September, 1971, was a lesson he gave only once, and one she would remember for the rest of her life.